you ride a kiteboard, just pick a board out of the rack. Okay, I'm going to go kite this. As compared to riding a board that's designed for kiteboarding. Do you think, like, if you could buy a board that was made in China, pretty nice board, you know, it's all right. It looks like a surfboard, it's cheap, it's like, wow, I got a board. Or going into something that was designed, what do you think the average user would feel? Would they feel the difference, like maybe the difference between I don't want to pick a car that I don't like, because I don't want to do that, but you get in a car and it feels okay. It's like a rental, it goes, and then you get a nice BMW, a nice 530, it just, whoa, this feels nice. So what do you think about the average person, or even somebody learning?
I mean, I think a lot of us, and I mean a lot of the guys, like the coaches that are here too, have tried to like just take random surfboards and try them, and you can make them work. But I think even from a riders who are at a more of like an intermediate level, you'll still feel the boards tend to have a tendency to be slow, plowing water, you know, just like what you were asking before about the chop, like when you have a thicker rail or a wider board, you just have more buoyancy, so you're kind of bouncing through the water instead of cutting through the water. And I mean, to kind of relate that even back to where you guys are at who are just learning, you know, even now, on a day like today, it's probably, you know, right around 20 miles an hour. If the wind were to pick up another few knots and you stayed on the same board or the same equipment, you can even find that in the twin tip. You know, the windier it gets, you have a tendency to go smaller in boards and things like that. And then you can compensate with different size kites. But I think if you just are randomly pulling a surfboard, you know, buying a random used surfboard or pulling something that you already use for surfing, you know, it can, you know, get you from point A to point B and maybe do sort of what you're looking for, but, you know, it's just not going to be the same refined, you know, shape designed specifically for what you're, you know, using. It's like you know, in the car equivalent of like taking a station wagon and trying to drive it around a race car or a racetrack, you know, and compete with something else.
I guess too, there's a durability issue too. You know, if you can get a cheap board, there's nothing wrong with that, but I wouldn't expect it to last. Like our production boards, I'm actually pretty proud of them. We have them made offshore, but we do glassing that will give you reasonable shelf life for the product. I mean, they're not cheap. There's a lot of add-ons to, you know, just having foot straps, having the pads, and having this area that gets fatigued really heavily. I've been messing around with durability things on my own, and I'll show you one of the boards in a minute. But I think when you buy a kite, you definitely want to get a season out of the thing. You know, so if you can get one for $3.99 and it's some of the ones they have like at Costco, they're not bad boards actually, they're pretty cool. But I would wonder after if you rode it a month straight, I think you'd go right through my deck. Which is the one, I'm thinking of one, it was a clothing company and they didn't make it. You see them all over the place at Costco. Realm, that's what it is, yeah. Or the Realm. So I'm not going to put that stuff down. I think, heck, if you're going to try it a few times and maybe rent a kite or, you know, buy, I mean, it's hard to explain, but I think most people that try it, you guys, how many days now? This is your first day? Do you think you're going to stay with it?
Yeah.
Okay, so there it is. I mean, it's just kind of like entry level. Maybe it's a little bit more expensive than surfing, but I know for me, and I'm planning on having a hip replacement, get in the water, I'm going to want the best stuff, best kites. It just makes it easier. And you know you've got the best. If you see Jason using the stuff, you know it's good.
So what materials do you put in to make the deck strong right there?
Well, these boards, our production models, are made out of EPS foam, which is expanded polystyrene. It's basically styrofoam, like a drinking cup. And they're cut on a computer machine, which I do all the programming and stuff. That's how we kind of built boards now, back in the old day. And I was going to come back to this. We'd actually have this big foam blank that is molded with a piece of wood in it, and we would put the lines on for our outline, cut it out with a handsaw, and we have a thing called electric planer that removes the foam. And we sculpt this board. And, you know, that was the way we did it for up to, I started using a computer in '89 to cut my boards. And that was, well, what are you doing? You're so, you know, well known with the plane. Well, it was time to move on. When it's time to go, you got to go. So we really found that with the computer machine, we could really refine the shapes. And I think with styrofoam, what happens is that it's very light and it's fairly durable to crush. That's the only thing bad about it. But what we did is we made the inside of the board light and made the outside of the board strong, which is the extra fiberglass layers. So to answer your question, we have extra layers here on the area you're standing. And we have 3 different layers on the deck and 2 on the bottom, which has been working out, because you don't want to have the board too heavy.
Well, you've done a lot with different layups too, like layup schedules and.
Yeah,
the
when we're
past
still,
few years.
we're
Like,
still
I know,
really just
like it's
touching.
kind of still an evolution. Like I know, just in the few years that I've been working with Pat, you know, that was a big thing at first, was getting a production board that was light enough and still felt close enough to his custom, so they still held that good feel and the good characteristics that you get out of our custom boards. Sorry, but were more durable and would last. So I know, you know, personally, going through how much glass was, you know, going kind of on the light side and seeing when the boards would break, and going on the heavy side and seeing how they would actually feel or how poorly they would feel, and you know, went back and forth through many different steps to get to where they are right now. And even just the way fiberglass works, you know, there's different cloth strands that lay over top of each other, you know, and you can lay them so that they're parallel to each other, that they're perpendicular, that they cross at an angle, and all that adds or takes away strength and key parts, and even how they wrap around the rail, you know, and carry through different sections of the board. So it's not just like you're adding extra material in places randomly and throwing it out there, but there's, you know, the whole layup scheduling of how it sits, you know, and that's something that I know, you know, we work with Morris a lot on, and through the different factories of getting them produced in different places to get them to where they are currently. And you know, it went from, you know, those of us that are riding hard on them, like breaking boards consistently, to like all of a sudden the boards were lasting a couple months, and then the boards were lasting 6 months, and then the boards were lasting a year, and we didn't change anything that we were riding. You know, we were riding just as hard, if not harder, on them because they weren't breaking, and you're trying to get it to that point to see where it'll go, to where, you know, now it's a year goes around and the graphics change, the board change, and the new one comes in, and the old ones are still in one piece, you know. So the evolution hasn't stopped. Like, I mean, even she's going to go into it further with like the copper board, but just different constructions are always kind of evolving in both surfing and especially in kiteboarding. And I think they're almost both feeding off each other now at this point. Like, I know your surfboards and the stuff that you're bringing in with the EVs are going both ways. You know,
Yeah,
the
that's
surfing
been
and into kiting.
Cross-pollination is really cool. I mean, I kind of separated my shaping of surfboards into like 3 categories. I make a lot of boards that you get towed behind a jet ski in larger waves, and that's been in all 31 countries. It's usually 10% of my orders are we call them tow boards, get pulled in. So that's kind of an extreme. And some of the bigger wave kiteboards, I made a couple boards for Elliot LeBeau on Maui, and he'll go out and do 15 to 30 foot surf. All it was a tow board design. But I knew it was a kiteboard, so we brought down the weight.
And 15 to 30 foot surf in his terminology is 30 to 60 foot faces. So you guys have
Like
an
5
idea
times
of
the
that.
height of the ceiling or something along that size. And why we get that, maybe 10 times a year, depending on the year. So, you know, I've been able to kind of cross both back and forth, and I happen to just really, I think strap sports are just the most extreme thing. And it's funny because the mainstream surfers, they don't really know. The pro guys know. I was going into that when you asked me about it. They see the ability to go out and surf for a wave without stopping for 45 minutes or an hour or whatever you want. I can't even imagine that's the longest ride you'll ever get, you know? You'll never get, unless you're on a river or something.